And you think back, because it wasn't very long ago in which this relationship was quite rocky. There was a lockout. I got to meet some of the union workers in the course of that because I was campaigning and then ended up being elected in office, and I represented some of these union members. And I remember the governor at that time would not host them to have the conversation about what was going on at that time. I think everybody here agrees that we want to avoid that at all costs because we know the impacts that had on the working families, what it had to do with farmers, what it had to do with American Crystal Sugar itself. And, if they're doing well, quite frankly, a lot of us are doing well along with them. So I'm going to get your thoughts on where this rests right now. Difficult at times to get people that are actually involved in these negotiations to come on. In fact, I think they're meeting today, which that's a sign for me is a good thing. If they're having a conversation today after this news officially came out with a rejection yesterday, I'm hoping, my fingers are crossed, that it's cordial, that in fact they're making some progress. So all the tumultuous conversation that had a lot of people frustrated just 10 short years ago is avoided. So that's coming up as well. But I want to start here because it's when our guests can actually join us. We've had Dr. Canton on from NDSU. He's with the econ department. When we come back, we're going to talk about the fact that earlier, and I mean just within the last hour and 15 minutes, the U.S. Federal Reserve raised interest rates yet again. I don't think anybody that's been following along with this is shocked. It should not have come as a surprise, but it is the second consecutive time that they've raised the rate by 0.75%, almost a full point. You've got this happening because, well, you're going to the grocery store and you're seeing how expensive bread and milk and everything else has gotten. You think about all the other expenses you've had that have increased. So the short-term measures that we can, quite frankly, do through policy is the fact that the feds can raise this rate, try to throttle down things. Well, you're already seeing that in some places of the country. I don't know that it's right here. In fact, we had Eric Hatch on just last Wednesday, a week ago today, talking about the housing market here and how it's a little different. But elsewhere, it's being impacted. You see the stock values being impacted. You're seeing small rise in layoffs, even though that there has been a number of new jobs there. But when you have the consumer price index rise by 9% annually in June, and the way this is ongoing, you are expecting something to be done. Well, this is it. What does it mean for you as far as taking out some money if you're going to be going out and trying to borrow this, that, the other thing? We're going to visit with Dr. Canton right after this. As Afternoons Live is just getting started on a Wednesday afternoon. It's beautiful out there, and I hope it's treating you well. Wherever you got us locked in on 790 AM, 94.1 and 104.7 FM, KFGO. On the conversation all day. Don't let me exclude you from any comments or questions. 35270 is the iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club. You can call me, 237-5948. That is the Laney's studio line. And as we were telling you right before we took a quick pause here, the Federal Reserve announced another steep interest rate hike just about an hour, 17 minutes ago, ramping up its efforts to bring down inflation from a 4-decade high. And you know, when we think about the economy, when we think about inflation, we think about what that means to you. We think about NDSU and Dr. James Caton, who joins us yet again here on Afternoons Live. Dr. Caton, I hope things have been treating you well.
Oh, everything has been great. Good to be on again, Tyler.
Yeah, I appreciate you jumping on with this very short notice. I knew that the feds were going to be meeting. I knew there was going to be a rate hike, but this is the second consecutive time that they go 0.75 percentage points to get the range of 2.25 to 2.5%. Explain why this step was taken yet again.
Yeah, so inflation readings have been high, and they've stayed high, higher than the Fed is comfortable with. The Fed has a mandate to maintain inflation at 2%. So they want inflation to fall back down to about 2%. They have to not only tighten, but convince investors that they're going to tighten in order to bring inflation back down to 2%.
Boy, we're a long ways from 2%. I think the last I had seen was, I think the consumer price rose 9% annually. Is that the same figure we're talking about, or am I off there, Dr. Caton?
Yeah, that's always an interesting question. 9.1% on the CPI. The figure that the Fed looks at, depending on which one, is going to be about 4.7 or 6.3. Both of those are still too high. They need to get down to 2%, which is why the Fed is still moving. Regardless of what measure they look at, they are above target, and they've not been able to very quickly move back down to the target. So 2 major rate increases in a row.
Oh, do I have you, Dr. Caton, or did I lose you?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
I am here.
Very good. Yeah, so we had the two in a row that are quite steep, but when you're looking at what you just said, whether it's 6 or 4%, you still have to get that down quite substantially here. But people listening right now are looking at this and they're wondering about interest rates for getting a car, a house, what this might mean for them and their checkbooks. Can you break that down for them so they have an understanding, including myself?
Yeah, so the inflation was in part caused by a massive increase in savings. We had a major increase in the savings rate, in the first year after the start of the COVID crisis. And all that extra money that was moving into the economy, people were using to buy more goods. They bought a lot of houses with that. And over time, that has dwindled lower and lower until now our saving rates are around 5%, which is a rate lower than before the pandemic started. Meanwhile, since about a year ago or so, we've been having more and more credit usage. So year over year, we have increased the amount of credit we've been using by about 16, 17%. And as interest rates go up, it's going to get more and more costly to increase the amount of credit that we have. So that inevitably should slow consumption expenditures because, 1, we have less savings, and 2, credit is more expensive.
Dr. Caton was my guest at NDSU, the economy department up there, just talking about the fact that the feds again had a rapid rate hike. Have you seen the impacts of, obviously this one just coming out today, but the one even prior to this is the second time in a row they've done this 0.75. Have you seen across the country what that's done? I mean, I've read some of some other economists, and as you pointed out last time you were on the show, well, every economist kind of has their own view on how things rest right now. I mean, has it impacted housing markets, the stock market? I think just as a general observer, not an expert like yourself, it seems that maybe that spurred some of the suppressed stock values there. Have you seen the Fed increase last time have any impact on inflation as of yet?
It certainly has had an impact on inflation expectations. Some of the extra inflation that we've been getting has been supply side, but certainly not all of it. I wouldn't even say most of it. But we did see a response in financial markets since April. Investors implicitly through their investments seem to expect lower inflation. So we have implied inflation expectations in the marketplace. And not only are those tending to be a lot lower right now, but the discrepancy between short-run and long-run inflation has also decreased a lot since April. So that's really good news. That says investors expect that there's going to be less inflation. That means that they're going to be preparing less for inflation. If you expect there's going to be more inflation, you're going to very quickly buy goods, and that actually makes inflation a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? By the same means, if investors expect that there's going to be less inflation, they're not going to be rushing to stock up on commodities, right? They might step back from that, and we'll actually see, because of their expectations, inflation come down. I think we're right about at that stage. I think in the next 2 to 3 months, I would expect that we'll start finally seeing that reversal that the Fed is looking for. These two major consecutive rate hikes will do a lot of the heavy lifting there if inflation expectations are any indicator of the future.
Does that indicate recession at all? That's the other term that people are hearing out there. Oh, and the U.S. is headed for a recession. It's not imminent, but it seems somewhat likely. I just want your thoughts on that and what that also means just for an average household.
Yeah, so, the ability of individuals to acquire credit at relatively low cost is going to probably be what gets us through this next little bump as we get to a more normal state of affairs where prices get normalized. We figure out how much inflation do we actually have? Are we actually moving back to a state of relatively low inflation in the next 1 to 2 years? It's important as we figure that out. If consumers are able to get access to the credit that they need, they can maintain the level of consumption that also maintains the incomes for everybody, right? It has to be sustainable, though. If they're unable to get access to credit because it's too expensive, then that becomes problematic. You mentioned the housing market. What's interesting right now is there doesn't seem to be a crash so much in the housing market. In the more expensive zip codes, we certainly see a pullback, but in terms of housing inventories, we still see some modest increases. But the supply bottlenecks still exist, and it doesn't look like builders want to keep building at the same pace that they have been building. So it's unclear that we're going to have like a 2008 style housing crash. In the least, we'll have a moderation. We'll likely have something of a pullback. But at this point, I don't see any indication that there will be a major housing crash. So then it's just a question of how is consumption affected by this? How is the level of employment affected? So far, we haven't seen anything that should make us worry, and we'll be watching closely over the next 2 to 3 months.
Well, very good. Dr. Caton, is there anything I missed before I let you go? Again, I know a short notice this rate increase just happened within the last hour and a half, but is there something I missed before I let you get back on with your day?
I think we want to look ahead to what the Fed is expecting for the future. And at this point, there doesn't seem to be a strong indication that the Fed is going to have another major rate increase at their next meeting. That's going to depend in part on the next inflation reading. So we have, we'll have releases of different inflation measures at the end of this month. Tomorrow, we're going to have release of GDP data, and then we'll have more CPI data next month. The Fed is going to look at that, and they're going to use that to help determine whether or not the market is responding appropriately. They're going to be looking at all the different movements in stock prices, interest rates, and so forth, but especially movements in inflation over this month. They're going to be really looking at that and thinking about whether to move ahead. Right now, the expectation is that they will not continue at the same pace that they have.
Very good. Dr. Caton, I'm going to let you go. As always, we appreciate your time, and we'll chat again soon, all right? Till then, you take care.
Great chatting. See you around time.
You bet. Dr. James Caton up at NDSU. He's with the econ department. I mean, what I'm gathering through some of this is, look, yeah, it's gonna bite a little bit if you're looking to go out and make some of those big purchases, but in the long run, I mean, hopefully this is going to bend that curve a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't be using that term ever again, given the last 2 years, but I think you're understanding what I mean. When you're looking at the rate of how things have shot up in cost for a variety of reasons, and in fact, if you missed our previous conversations with Dr. Caton, kfgo.com, go to the podcast page. You know what? Wherever you get your podcasts, Find Afternoons Live. Click subscribe. The price is right. It's free. We don't have any inflationary rate there. It's all free. And you can listen to that. He explained the causes for this. Yes, federal spending part of that in both this administration and the Trump administration. Yes, the war in Ukraine from Russia has impacted this. The supply chain that was disrupted so much during COVID has impacted this. It has been a perfect storm. And you know what? We're all pretty much weathering it right now when it comes to buying the goods when we can find it. Supply, all of that. You understand that. So here we are. And what little measures can be taken up, they're trying. You got to give them credit for that, right? Let me know at 35270. You can also call me at 237-594, right? I've got messages already awaiting me, whether that's about the Crystal Sugar and the Union dispute, also about the Fargo-Dome and Bison football beer. It's all on the table when we come back. Got to get you caught up with Paul Jurgens of the KFGO News Center. I'll check in with Rusty Halverson as well, get you the latest egg news. I'm Tyler Axis. You got locked into KFGO Fargo.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead, mostly cloudy now. At 2:30, it's 74. I'm Paul Jurgens. 2 former Minneapolis police officers have been sentenced on federal charges for violating George Floyd's civil rights.
It's a 3-year sentence for J. Alexander King and a 3.5-year sentence for Tu Tao. King, Tao, and Thomas Lane were convicted in February of not intervening when former officer Derek Chauvin caused Floyd's death by kneeling on his neck. Lane received a 30-month federal prison sentence last week. King and Tao are also scheduled to stand trial on state charges in October for aiding and abetting manslaughter and murder.
KFGO News correspondent Scott Peterson. Burglary charges are pending against 2 people. They were caught breaking into storage units at North Star Storage in Moorhead, according to police. Police were tipped off by a concerned citizen. They say they stopped and arrested 35-year-old Zachary Elstead and 42-year-old Jennifer Carroll, who have no permanent addresses. Police found burglary tools and property belonging to renters of the storage units in their van. They also found that locks had been cut off the doors of multiple units. 74, mostly cloudy. This is KFGO News. 74. This is KFGO News. A man suffered severe injuries after rolling a riding lawnmower. He was pinned beneath it. That happened about 5 miles west of Crystal in northeastern North Dakota. A highway patrol says 62-year-old Mark Saget was mowing a ditch along a highway, maneuvering the mower on the top of a culvert opening when it slid and rolled over. A co-worker and several others were able to get the mower off Saget. He was taken to the hospital in Park River and then transferred to Altru in Grand Forks. Otter Power Company customers in North Dakota will likely see their monthly bills go up as the utility implements smart meters. Those are meters that provide constant information on electric use to the companies, thereby eliminating the need for a meter reader. Public Service Commissioner Sherry Haugen-Halpert.
The proposed rate would be charged monthly on a per meter basis, varying from $1.71 for a residential meter to $71.76 for a large general service transmission meter.
Ottertail calls the rider the Advanced Grid Infrastructure Cost Recovery Rider. The Public Service Commission has opened an opportunity for hearing. At least one commissioner would like at least an informal hearing. Commissioner Randy Christman.
I don't like the name of it. To me, it's misleading. People are, I think, starting to understand the grid and the role regional transmission organizations play, and the grid as this big thing to do their smart meters and call it a grid rider. I think causes people to think that this is something that's just being passed on to the company that isn't their decision, and it is their decision.
The charge would be in effect for monthly bills next year. The Minnesota Chippewa tribe has voted to remove a decades-old requirement that members have a minimum of 25% Chippewa blood. 65% of voters on a referendum question say the blood quantum requirement should be removed from membership of the Six Reservation tribe. The referendum is a guide for tribal leaders who will now decide whether to ask voters to change the tribe's constitution. The majority of voters each reservation, including White Earth and Leech Lake, should be allowed to determine its own enrollment requirements. A federal appeals court has dismissed an appeal from South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem in her legal fight to hold a fireworks display at Mount Rushmore to celebrate Independence Day. That was last year. She sued in an attempt to overturn the National Park Service's denial of the state's application to hold a fireworks display to celebrate the 2021 holiday. The 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, though, found that South Dakota's objections to the Park Service's decision did not apply because it was in the past. The court also found the federal government was within its rights to deny the state from shooting off fireworks on federal land. Partly sunny, maybe a thunder shower this afternoon, high of about 77. Fargo-Moorhead. 52 overnight, an evening shower possible, then clearing. Partly sunny, 74 tomorrow, 81 sunny Friday. Mostly cloudy, 74 degrees. Paul Turkins, News Radio, KFGO.
Rusty Halverson Dresby in the KFGO studio. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back to the room.
Yeah, thank you, my friend.
Yes, we are friends. Even if you forget when I needed a ride and what day that was supposed to be. That was yesterday, not today. But
I can give you a ride later on
Water
today.
under the bridge. Water under the bridge.
After my USDA teleconference. Yep.
Long story short for you, as the one of those things I really just roll my eyes at. Many of you know that I'm getting my vehicle worked on, my Chevy.
Was it hail?
Hail from last year. Finally get it in. Rusty, my rental vehicle's not available, till the next day. At 5 o'clock, you're gonna be around. Could I get a ride?
Oh yeah, I'll be around.
Yeah, yesterday I look around and because he's not here by the time I got done with all my post production. Then I wasn't going to say anything. I got a ride, and I expected, all right, maybe something came up. I'm not going to pry. I'm not going to make you feel bad because you're a very humble and guilt person for whatever reason.
Yep.
Even, our friendly interactions, I give you crap, I'll say.
Sure.
Okay. Well, today he comes in and says, well, I got something at 4:30, but I should still be able to give you a ride. Well, about 24 hours too late, but I made it work. So we got that out of the way.
It was a time portal.
Yes. And here you are. But we're still friends, yes.
Yes.
I
do apologize about
that. Not why I called. We talked about the port over in Ukraine when it comes to exports.
Yeah.
We had talked about you cannot trust Russia. Well, they proved that within a matter of hours after coming up.
Yep.
And signing an agreement right before they pushed a button to shoot a missile at that same port. I know you've been talking about this with some people very close to the situation.
Yeah, the U.S. Grains Council Board of Delegates holding a meeting in Sacramento this week, and Dr. Antonina Brokia in Ukraine was a keynote speaker. Now, she's an expert in ag econ. She was actually the dean of ag economics at a university in Ukraine before being forced to leave due to the Russian invasion. She says when word first came out that Russia was planning to attack Ukraine, she immediately planned for the worst, left with her children, but her husband stayed home in Ukraine.
Thank God I have contact with him, and I try to check every single day if he is alive and if he is okay. He cannot leave Ukraine since he's military obligated, of course, and even if he could, he says me, I'm a man, that meaning that I will fight for my country. So, but he felt much confident, knowing that me and children are in a safe place. So he just tell us, just go and keep children safe.
Now, since that Russian invasion of Ukraine, Tyler, there have been mounting reports, evidence that Russia is stealing grain and other crop supplies from Ukraine and trying to export them. And that's something that folks are trying to get a handle on, and we can talk about that more next hour if you'd like.
Yeah, I would. Well, could you imagine being in that situation? Good God.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention, Rusty. I'll let you go and come back next hour, all right?
Okay. I promise.
I promise. Okay. You're a man of your word, right?
I try to be.
You can check out more of his words and his work at kfgo.com. Him and Sarah Heinrich are the best in the business. KFGO.com, one click away, that agriculture tab to learn more. CBS National News on the way. When we come back, we got him. John Risky, the president of the local 167G, the Union of American Crystal Sugar. We're going to figure out where things sit as of now. That's right after this here on KFGO. As the negotiation process has been underway between the union and American Crystal Sugar, and quite frankly, just within the last 24 hours, the union has rejected the final offer of American Crystal Sugar. That was a 4-year contracted deal that was offered. There's been a long back and forth about pay, vacation, benefit, those sort of things that you expect in these circumstances. And we're going to be visiting with the union side right now, and we're going to try to get both sides of this conversation here on KFGO. But John Riskey is the president of BCTGM, the local 167G, joining us right now here on Afternoons Live. John, I appreciate you taking time. How are you doing today?
Good, Tyler. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing swell. I've been following along with this as best I can from just being an observer. And I guess the first question is, what was it in this offer that led your members to reject what American Crystal Sugar was offering?
I believe from listening to our members and stuff, just the lack of respect that employers are receiving, or when during COVID, the country was shut down. We kept our BCTGM members, kept the American Crystal Sugar plants going, kept the food processing going to get the sugar out.
See, John, I'm going to step in here. I'm going to put you on hold so my producer can get a better connection, because what you're saying is really important, but it's pretty choppy there. So as Eric Johnson gets a better connection with John Riskey, because this is we want to hear the side of the union. We want to hear the side of the American Crystal Sugar as well, because we want to avoid, obviously, anything that resembles anything remotely close to what happened about 10 years ago. But there's been a back and forth. Now, there's been conversations from when the negotiations started, what were they started at an appropriate time? Should it have been sooner to avoid this kind of last minute back and forth? What happens now with this rejection? And in fact, you got a deadline coming up. Are we going on an expired contract? You think about lockouts. You think about strikes. You think about where the economy has really led to, I think, leverage being more on the side of workers for the first time in a very long time. Does that play out into this conversation? That's one of the things that I'm going to be asking John when we get a better connection with him as well. When it comes to the long-term impacts of that last negotiation, I mean, I've got some messages in here of people still upset about how things were handled. And in fact, I think I'm going to try to get back with John here. John, do I have you loud and clear this time?
I hope so.
There you are. It sounds like you're in the studio with me, John. I appreciate you and my producer getting that worked out. So yeah, I'm going to ask the question again, and because it was, I think, important for people to understand, this last offer, the final offer from American Crystal Sugar Company, was rejected by your members, and I guess the first question is why?
I guess the members just feel they aren't respected for the work that they do for this company. We're one of the only BCTGM and international workers. All the members kept the country going when COVID was shut down, as far as getting food and stuff on the table for the country. We've been through a lot, and they just don't feel like they're respected for that. And with inflation the way it is and going up and stuff, that they just feel that they need something better than what's set on the table.
So with this final offer, and I've got numbers here that, in fact, we'll put up at KFGO.com for this so people can look at it too. I don't want to have to read through, the annual base wage every year starting this year of what percentage there was. But, when you look at the way it's been discussed out there, that, American Crystal Sugar is basically saying that, it would have been a 17% raise over 4 years. There's some vacation changes there, what the average hourly rate would be, a ratification bonus, which to me seems like maybe a little bit of that carrot on a stick. Was there anything, you talk about disrespect, was it not a substantial enough increase in the workers' eyes? Elaborate a little bit more, if you can.
Yeah, so you're right on that spot as an increase with the inflation, and our insurance isn't locked in, so the company can raise our insurance rates at any time, or once a year, whenever, and we don't know where we're at there. And with that, pretty much eats up what we're making for raises. Also, it just feels like they're they just want more than what's out there, and they want something that's set up across the board. They have a lot in there that's set up for individuals, but our people are looking for something that's across the board to get equal for everyone that's out there, because everyone does their hard work. Everyone does what they need to do to make this company profitable.
When it comes to this vote, do we have a total, John? I mean, was this overwhelmingly rejected by workers? And I ask this with the knowledge that it wasn't long ago that there was a lockout that happened, that those wounds I think are still there. I can tell that in my text club right now. Is there any fear? I guess the reason why I asked, let me reiterate here. The reason why I asked, do you know, was it an overwhelmingly rejected offer? Was it split? Because are there people within the union membership that are saying, look, I don't want to have to be locked out. I don't want to go on strike. I'm just kind of curious if you've got any of those figures.
So it was overwhelming. And the deal on the lockout, the company told us at the negotiating table that there will not be a lockout. They will not go through that again. And as we all found out after the lockout, there was nothing left of those factories there. They went through and couldn't get their product out like they should have. And the shareholders found that out afterwards. And nobody wants to go through the lockout. It wasn't easy for them. It sure wasn't easy for our workers to go through that. So that's not an issue. Worrying about. People have to worry about getting locked out.
So no worry of a lockout. Does the company and do these people that rely on the company, is there any fear of a strike from the union if negotiations don't continue after this final rejection?
So the first step where we have right now is we sent a letter this morning to the company requesting an extension of the contract and looking to set up dates to get back to the table. As far as the strike, I know most of the people I'm sure out there haven't heard about the BCTGM and Frito-Lay's and Kellogg's, is that our international is very strong if a situation comes to, which I'm not saying we're down that road yet. I hate to say the word strike because I don't believe that we need to go down that road. I think we can come to a good a settlement and an agreement that'll make both sides happy. But our international is very strong and supportive in doing if our members want to go down that road, our international will be there to support us. The National AFL-CIO will be there to help us. They got 12.5 million members, 56 different union affiliates across the United States and Canada that will be there to support us with that. But we just need to get back to the table and get something that the people will accept.
So
feel respected for.
John, I apologize to me to step in front of you there, but as far as this rejection now, the hope is, and the way I'm gathering is the expectation is the current agreement that is about to expire. We're hoping to extend what currently is there as negotiations continue, right?
Correct. And then also in that extension, any of these raises or any of the classifications that got upgrades or whatever, those would go retroactive to the day that we got the new contract. That's the way all contracts are done. When you do an extension of the current contract, is once you get to an agreement, then you go back and you get back pay for all that time and those hours once they go into effect back. So it would be back to August 1st.
John Risky, my guest, president of the local 167G, the union that is, the American Crystal Sugar employees. The reason why I asked about this extension, because I know that there was, it's been reported that there was attempts from American Crystal Sugar Company to get this negotiation process started sooner rather than perhaps when it started. Was there a firm reasoning as to why the negotiation up until this point started perhaps a little bit later than what the company was hoping for?
So the negotiation started on the normal negotiation process. We were, about 2 months before the contract expired, we had offered the company 24 dates to meet. They accepted 12 of those dates, and that's normally how contracts are done. It's just you meet. We've done contracts with General Mills for a master agreement a week before the contract is up, and we met the week prior. So that wouldn't have made a difference.
Okay. I guess the final question I have for you, and then I'll give you the final word, is what are you wanting specifically? What do your members want specifically to come out of this negotiation? Is it a annual pay increase? What do you want locked in for the next 4 or 5 years?
Well, I don't want to sit here and negotiate
Sure.
on
Okay.
in a public, and stuff, but an environment that's out there, all companies are having a tough time finding workers. And we told the company that they needed to get a better pay increase for all the members to keep them there so they don't leave, and to be able to hire. They're short, I'd say at least 13 to 15% that they can't fill with their staff that they need to run those factories. And they're spending, I won't go into the amounts, but they're spending a lot on bringing contract labor in that they have to bring in to help keep the factories running, when they could use that money better on the members and as the people to bring them into the factories. So they have a workforce that's reliable and there, and they don't have to keep retraining people. And the bottom line is that'll make a better product and make the company more efficient.
Well, John, I know it's been a pretty, I don't want to say unusual, but it's been probably a stressful couple of months for you, but I appreciate you taking some time sharing the union's perspective with our KFGO listeners, knowing that a lot of them are in fact impacted by this process. Is there anything I missed before I let you go today?
I think we're good there, Tyler. Just want to say thanks and appreciating you for having us to express our voice, and we wanted, that's part of the union membership, is for our members to be able to express and have their voice heard.
Well, this platform's there. We're going to be following along. It's it impacts all of us. So, John, I appreciate it. I hope things get resolved rather quickly. All right, you take care until then.
You bet. You bet. Thanks, Tyler.
All right, thanks. Yep, John Risky is the president here when it comes to the workers, the people that are punching in, punching out, and getting the job done of the local 167G. We're going to put a call out for American Crystal Sugars as well when it comes to Lisa Morgan. I know she's been involved in this. It's only fair to have that perspective brought forward as well. In the meantime, we can take your thoughts on this. 35270. You can call me at 237-5948. We're going to wrap up the first hour of Afternoons Live right after this by taking your thoughts right here on KFGO. last time, and you can go all the way out to Bismarck, where there was a governor at the time that closed his door to hear the concerns from the workers at that time. Messages in, and this did linger on throughout that. That's why we want to try to avoid and get this resolved quickly. Tyler, I refuse to buy American Crystal given the disastrous lockout. How the business and farmers treat the employees matters greatly to me as a consumer. Another one, the last time you and Crystal Sugar, and I think you means the union, had a contract dispute, they locked you out, and then later the farmers had the guts to go on radio and see that it cost them six figures, and they do it all over again. How do you go against a group of people that are subsidized by the government? That's the type of messages I'm getting in. We'll take more of yours right after CBS and KFGO News. 7, never going to give you up. Release Rick Astley. You can text in all the other things that he's not going to do for you at 35270. 1983, Madonna's self-titled debut album was released. 84, Purple Rain hit theaters. Problem Child in 1990. Also in 93, Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dreams was released. Also an important date, 1953, the Korean War armistice was signed, ending 3 years of fighting there. So that's some of this on this date that happened right here, July 27th. Can you believe it's already on the end of July? I'm going to come back to all of these messages in about American Crystal Sugar, the union. Clearly, there's people that still have high emotions. I get it. There's also mixed in here that hoping that this negotiation comes to a peaceful resolution quickly rather than being drawn out. I'll come back to that. Also, when you think about Kellogg, you think about General Mills, all of that, the leverage is there for workers for the first time. We're seeing that play out nationally, and now you're going to probably see it here locally. That's coming up right after this KFGO News.
KFGO News, partly sunny, Fargo-Moorhead 75. I'm Paul Jurgens. The last 2 former Minneapolis police officers who convicted of violating George Floyd's civil rights have been sentenced in federal court. J. Alexander King was sentenced today to 3 years, and Tu Tao got a 3.5-year sentence. They were convicted in February of 2 counts of violating Floyd's civil rights. The jury found that they deprived the 46-year-old Floyd of medical care and failed to stop Derek Chauvin as he knelt on Floyd's neck. A Cass County deputy was arrested for DWI in Becker County, Minnesota over the weekend. Sheriff Jesse Johnner was told about the arrest of Savannah Gracer on Monday. He has placed Gracer on unpaid administrative leave during an internal investigation. Gracer began working with the sheriff's office in Fargo in November of last year. She is a non-licensed roster correctional deputy at the jail. The sheriff's office says people in that position work on an as-needed basis. An elderly couple has died in a house explosion in a Minneapolis suburb of Hopkins. Reporter Susie Jones says it happened late this morning.
One neighbor reported seeing a bed frame wedged in part of a tree. Kent Perusek lives just down the street and describes what he saw.
So I came out of the house, started jogging down the street, and just saw a cloud of debris, smoke, papers, whatever. Was kind of flying in the air, so I assumed that it was an explosion, and then I called 911 and reported it.
The cause of the explosion is under investigation. A 19-year-old man is dead after a fiery crash in southwestern North Dakota. It happened last night. The state patrol says the man from Taylor lost control of the pickup he was driving on Old Highway 10 that was east of Richardson. The pickup left the road and rolled several times in the ditch, catching fire. The driver was ejected. Patrol is still investigating the cause of that crash. It happened just before 7. Near 77, partly sunny this afternoon. There's a chance of an isolated shower, thunder shower, just some very light scattered showers across parts of North Dakota and northern Minnesota. Again, 77, our expected high, 52 overnight. An evening shower can't be ruled out, otherwise mostly clear. 74, partly sunny tomorrow, 81, sunny Friday. Saturday, 88, sunshine. Wind picks up a bit with a chance of showers, thunderstorms Saturday night. Again, 75. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
Well, Afternoons Live, we're going to be rolling with the changes in scheduling throughout the day here. We had John Risky with the union getting their side of this negotiation out earlier, and we just had contact with American Crystal Sugar, and hopefully by the end of today, if not tomorrow, we'll be visiting with Lisa Borgen or somebody from American Crystal, because it's only fair to get both sides of this out. And so we're going to be flexible. We do have Chris Adberry. I had to visit with him earlier today. Studio host here, Minnesota Twins. They're playing right now, and the last I had seen it was tied. That could have, no, I'm going to shake head. No.
It is very much not tied anymore. We are in the top of the 5th, 8-3.
Is Archer still on the mound?
On top. Top of the fifth, so I don't know who's pitching for the Twins.
Archer
right
was, and he gave up 3 runs at the bottom of right at the first inning.
Yeah.
So
we're now in the top of 5, 8-3.
Wow. Okay. Well, forget everything I said about being tied at 3 all. It's not anymore. But that conversation is sponsored by Jiffy Lube. Right here, Fargo, 3 convenient locations, and Linex with your truck accessories and so much more. You can find them on Main in West Fargo. We'll play that back a little bit later on because there's questions. You've got a deadline coming up. You got a conversation that we had about Miguel Sano being back in the lineup, Kenta Maeda. What's his timeline? What's the signal sent to fans if there is nothing accomplished before this trade deadline? We visited all about that. But because he is actually in the studio right now and we had a visit earlier, we'll play that back a little bit later on for you. Because in the meantime, there's messages in about a variety of things. One of them being the negotiations between the union and American Crystal Sugar. Now, we've had this scenario played out a few times already nationally, not here. I mean, certainly we had it here 10 years ago, 11 years ago, whatever the exact time frame is, approximate, I should say. And things were not good. They were not comfortable for really anybody involved. Perhaps over the last 10 years, I think maybe there was a lesson learned that, hey, we want to avoid this and not do that all over again. Now, what changed on the national side of all this conversation that does trickle right down to your local town, whether that's Hillsborough, Moorhead, wherever you listen to me right now, is just the national landscape and the way the economy is going. That pandemic that we have come out on the other side, I know it's in some people's eyes not over because COVID's still lingering out there, but the workforce part of it changed. You've got people leaving jobs rapidly for different jobs. They were working from home if they could, were questioning the amount of time and effort they're putting into jobs that weren't really satisfying them, whether it was pay, benefits, time. And it has changed just workforce in general. And it's not that, people just don't want to work anymore, because that is not true. Unemployment rates are very low. Now, I've made the argument that there are more jobs than there are people to actually work now. People that are 55 and older are finding themselves not necessarily rushing back to the employment side of things. They're taking early retirement. They're taking pensions. They're not returning. And you know what? We aren't having as many kids as we were in that generation. Not as many bodies to fill those jobs. So with all of that and the need to have people on the front lines of wherever company you are working for, the leverage is there on the workforce side. Whether you're a union member or you're just out there by yourself trying to find another job and get a good paying wage. You've seen it, whether it's at a place like American Crystal Sugar, McDonald's, Walmart, what other factory lineup is out there that you can interject any company and you're going to end up with the same scenario. Wages have gone up. Have they gone up to the rate of inflation? Unfortunately, no. That's a whole other topic of conversation that, quite frankly, we had at the top of the show. So for all the times that I talk about January 6th or Donald Trump now being investigated by the Department of Justice, I always get the same, why don't you talk about important things like inflation? We do. You just don't listen or you don't want to acknowledge that. That's why I'd encourage you. Subscribe to the podcast. It's free. You won't miss those conversations. They happen on this program. But when it comes to wages going up, it's the rate of which your increase is going to be when you have a long-term contract that I think is part of the dispute here. When it comes to this union in particular, the national, you heard from John Risky saying, look, we've got a national organization that will get our back if, heaven forbid, a strike is necessary. You've seen strikes happen in similar situations. I'm not talking about similar in any type of work environment. I'm not going to compare what happens at American Crystal Sugar and their, outfits to what's going on in Kellogg. I don't know the ins and outs and the differences, the similarities. So I'm not trying to say these are apples to apples here. But what I'm saying is you had the workers at Kellogg say, look, we felt disrespected. They went on strike. I think General Mills had a similar situation, right? 2021, I think General Mills, they had some workers go on strike as you, ratified a new contract eventually. The the leverage is being used more now from, I think, union membership, perhaps just because of the general environment. Wherever you listen to me on the crystal clear 790 AM signal or 104.7 FM, 94.1. The questions are, I think, out there of, well, what happens if the company decides we're not going to extend negotiations, because we wanted to start these negotiations earlier than what the union does. I know that was a point of contention brought up to me months ago as I've been following along on this. The company wanted to start at one date, union at a different date, and you heard John Risky say, well, if we started earlier, it wouldn't have made a difference where we are now. That could be debated, because here we are now looking to extend the negotiation because deadline is right here. When it comes to the rate increase, I get it. People are out there, they're saying, you know what, I value more of my time. I value the output I'm doing for you. I know what type of profits are for here, there, other places. You've got a whole other industry involved with this that people will point to because there's government involvement. And they'll say, well, if you're getting that, then why can't I get this? That's all part of this conversation, let alone benefits, vacation, all of that. Curious what you think at 35270. You can also call me at 237-5948. Tyler, I'm one of the few remaining union workers that was working at Crystal in 2011. Crystal really needs to step up on their end of the show their employees the respect they deserve with a much better offer comes in. Other messages as well. Tyler, don't kid yourself. How many abortions have there been? You want replacement workers? Wake up. Okay, everything's got to come back towards abortion. There are not enough people. You know how expensive it is to have children in the first place? There are people that are choosing not to have children at growing rates. Because you know what? You want to talk about negotiation and workforce. Well, you've got people that are saying, if you want me to have a child, I need to have a livable wage. And you know what? Having some paid time off to raise that kid, because if we're not going to provide daycare or childcare, then at least allow me time off, know that my job's secure, so I can go spend time with that child in those early months, whether it's the father or mother. Yet we scoff at that idea too. It's not as though we've got people that are able to stay at home because things cost more. The world has changed. Both parents are typically working now. And if you can afford to have one person stay home, congratulations. I'm happy for you. But that's not the reality for a lot of people. Again, that plays into negotiations. That comes back to workforce. That comes back to the employment environment. Some of those benefits that I think average families or people that want to start families are asking for need to be on the table. Whether that's through the company, whether that's through tax dollars to provide those opportunities for a child care facility, but we scoff at them and then we wonder, God, why aren't people having kids? More messages coming in. I will come back to those. Chris Atterbury, also perhaps, again, we're being very flexible today. We're taking your conversation all day. You want to call in, that's fine as well. 237-5948, it's the Laney Studio Line. The Act Consultants of North Dakota Text Club completely blowing up over this topic at 35270. That American Crystal, we've got some other things as well. I got some Red Hawks tickets to give away today. For tonight's game. That's why it's got to be today. And we'll have a little game of Name That Beer, where I pull a slogan, I pull a jingle. You just got to name which beer company that is. That and more coming up between now and 5 here on Afternoons Live. You're listening to KFGO Fargo. Stick around. 35270. That's where I'm going. That's provided by the Ad Consultants of North Dakota. I'm sitting in the Gunderson studio, and you can call me on the Laney studio line at 237-5948. Message is coming in my response to the other text. Tyler, you nailed it. So sick of these, the anti-abortion folks. They are only pro-birth. They don't support life with medical assistance for health care, daycare, or educational assistance. Tyler, yeah, let's add millions of adults who were unwanted and neglected as children to the workforce. Others coming in. Tyler, I have a family member working at Crystal Sugar. When they told me what the union offered the company, I thought that was the company's offer. The union's initial offer was way too low. Well, and I know that there was a back and forth. I've got the paperwork here of some of the negotiations. And I want to be abundantly clear as well, that we did have John Risky on from the union. We have made contact with my producer, Eric Johnson. I did touch base with Lisa Borgen. And if it doesn't happen today, I'm hoping that maybe we can find a time for tomorrow. It's always fair to get their side of where things are. And, with some of we don't intend to have another lockout. Okay, well, that's a good first step. You heard John say, I don't even want to use the term strike. Okay, that's good. But at what point, is there a point in which we say, okay, well, this back and forth has changed. That we've heard the term disrespect within this conversation as well. So we'll get the latest. But you know what? If you're a grower out there, your side of this is more than welcome as well. 237-5948. And, of course, the text club as well. When I look at the percentages, we're talking about it over a course of, 4 years, I think is what we've narrowed down to. There seems to be wiggle room. I just don't know where and who's going to budge. I do not want to hear from workers again, as I did 10 years ago, who are struggling, that we're just trying to find somebody to listen to them. Now, I think, as I was saying earlier, it seems like, there is full intention of avoiding that from the company as well. Maybe a lesson of how important those workers were at that time. But I'm talking not from inside American Crystal. I'm not talking about inside you. I'm talking just as a policymaker at that time. Last week I was telling you about the fact that the Attorney General's office, there was a time where there was a gatekeeper there. Well, she's now been removed because she put up a gate for you to get access to those public records. And I'm still demanding that there be an investigation there, as you should be as well. And if the Attorney General's office isn't going to take it up, I know that there's other means that can be taken, and I hope people are thinking about it. But I was talking about, at the time, they just blocked off the Attorney General from any uncomfortable conversation. We had those uncomfortable conversations the last time this situation played out. Not everybody opened their door, though. I was so disappointed in Jack Dalrymple at that time, who was governor of North Dakota, that refused to meet with the workers at the time. Jack Dalrymple that also had a farm out here in Castleton. I remember Ryan Taylor running for governor as a Democrat back then, wanting to at least say, look, the door would be open if I was there. So I have those memories of this conversation. You've got memories of it from whatever perspective you were at as well. And visiting with the workers and knowing that we were trying to find out whatever could be done, whether through state law or any other means, to help budge this along to get some resolution so it wasn't going to take months upon months. Unfortunately, it did. Nobody wants that again. I'm confident of it. That's why we're going to have the conversation, have this platform available to people that want to utilize it to share their perspective, to share where they're coming from, whether it's part of this negotiation or somebody that's been a family member or somebody that's been a farmer. I don't care how you're impacted by this, knowing how big of a company this is, what it means when it comes to agriculture and the sugar in this area. It impacts all of us, business, family, friends. Tyler, I'm a grower and I'm for the workers, comes in at 35270. I don't know where this is coming. I'll just read it as it came in. Tyler, so you and Heidkamp and your buddy Weak Biden said that Putin was the cause of the high gas prices. Are you guys giving Putin credit for gas prices going down? Are you? Are you giving credit to Biden for gas prices going down? through the means of which we're done. I mean, this is a kind of a double-edged thing here as far as if you're not going to acknowledge that the constraints in the refineries, as we've had Congressman Armstrong come on, which, quite frankly, him and I don't agree on a variety of things, but at least he's honest about the refinery capacity in this country not being where it is to refine the oil that we produce right here in North Dakota. Now, I know this number, I always texted saying, well, they're prohibiting drilling. Not true. The permits are there. They're choosing not to drill. But the war in Ukraine, that invasion did, in fact, create higher gas prices. Was it solely that? No. The supply, the demand, all of that, because, boy, people were locked down for 2 years and they wanted to spread their wings, fly. They wanted to put the pedal to the metal, get the hell out of the house, and go travel, go to work. All those things do have an impact. But if you're going to be naive enough to say, well, geez, you're just putting blame on Putin without acknowledging that a lot of the imports that we got were from there. Remember when this war started, I said, hey, if we're going to ban Russian oil, you're going to be okay with paying more at the pump? At the time, a lot of you said yes. I don't forget. I'm wondering if this texter did that. Is at 35270. Going to get you caught up with Paul Jurgens at that KFGO News Center. When we come back, well, maybe it'll be Chris Atterbury. Maybe it'll be American Crystal Sugar. I know that you and I are going to be continuing this conversation all the way to 5 o'clock. It's Wednesday afternoon. I also got some Red Hawks tickets to get out. It's for tonight's game. I mean, I got like 14 tickets. I know last night was just packed crowd. I want to send you up there so you can enjoy that as well. That will happen before that 5 o'clock punch out. I'm Tyler Axis, host of Afternoons Live. That's what you're listening to right here on 790 AM, 94.1 and 104.7 FM, KFGO.
highway, maneuvering the mower on the top of a culvert opening when it slid and rolled. A co-worker and several others were able to get the mower off Sagard. He was first taken by ambulance to First Care Hospital in Park River and then transferred to Altru in Grand Forks. A 19-year-old man is dead after a fiery crash in southwestern North Dakota last evening. The state patrol says the Taylor man lost control of the pickup he was driving on Old Highway 10 east of Richardson. The pickup left the road and rolled several times in the ditch, catching fire. The driver was ejected. The patrol is still investigating that crash. Fargo-Moorhead, 77 or so for our high this afternoon. Partly sunny, somewhat breezy, a northwest wind at 15 to near 30 miles an hour at times. And we still have an afternoon shower or thunder shower chance. Evening showers, a possibility, and then clearing, 52. Tomorrow, partly sunny, 74. Sunny Friday, 81. Partly sunny, 75. Paul Jerkins, News Radio, KFGO.
I'm going to get right to Rusty Halverson, part of our farm and ranch team. We're talking about a wife from Ukraine who was an expert in agriculture over there. What's the latest when it comes to exports?
Well, Dean of Agricultural Economics at a university in Ukraine, Dr. Antonina Brokya, she was one of the keynote speakers of the U.S. Grain Council Board of Delegates meeting being held in Sacramento. And with her area of expertise in agriculture, she's keeping a close eye on what's happening with ag in Ukraine and how that's affecting other countries.
Some of them were attacked, unfortunately, like Mariupol port. It was completely destroyed. Some of ports were occupied, like Berdansk or Kherson port, and a lot of grain was stolen from ports. According to those records that we have in Ukraine, it's more than 600,000 tons is already stolen from Ukraine and shipped both to Russia or even to other countries like Syria. They accept our stolen grain that we, of course, do not appreciate. And some ports are still full of grain, like Odessa port.
There are some situations, according to Antonina, Tyler, where if Russian troops are trying to occupy areas, some farmers in Ukraine choosing to burn their grain rather than let it be stolen.
Just a dire situation.
Yep.
I mean, and there's unfortunately no end in sight. We've been many, many months into this already.
Absolutely.
Like we've been saying, can't trust Russia. Even when they do come to the table, and hours later they strike the same port that they were saying, hey, yep, here's a chance. But,
Yep. We'll continue to watch it.
Yeah. Well, Rusty, I appreciate it. You have a good afternoon. We'll talk again tomorrow. All right?
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, Rusty Halverson, Sarah Heinrich, they're the best in the business. You go to KFGO.com. You just click right on that agriculture tab to learn a little bit more. When we come back after CBS News, we reach out, and I'm grateful that they're able to make this work. Lisa Borgen with American Crystal Sugar. Let's talk about where they stand on this negotiation. That's coming up right after this here on KFGO. when it comes to negotiations, when it has the union, American Crystal Sugar. We visited with the union representative earlier on, John Risky. Lisa Borgen is the vice president of the administration at American Crystal Sugar, and she joins us right now. Lisa, I appreciate you coming on at such short notice. How are you today?
I'm good. Hi, Tyler. I don't think we've ever met, so nice to meet you.
I have not had the opportunity, and it's a pleasure to meet you as well. Hopefully we can change that soon, all right?
Right.
So, obviously, the last 24, 48 hours, that conversation hasn't been ideal, I guess, when it comes to the negotiations. I'm just curious, where do things rest for American Crystal Sugar right now that the union has rejected this, what was dubbed the final offer? Where are we sitting, Lisa?
So generally when a union rejects a final offer, their next step is to either take a vote to strike or ask for an extension if your contract is ending, and then ask to continue to talk. And that's where we're at. We didn't hear from the union until later this afternoon. I did hear from the press, who heard from the union about the vote, but I just did get a request from the union to have an extension of the contract. Our contract ends at the end of July, so that's like on Monday. So they've requested to extend it, and we are going to certainly, give them the honor of that request.
Well, that's good. I've been saying, Lisa, I know how busy you've been. I think that everybody involved, directly, indirectly, are hoping that we can keep this ball rolling forward there, and to hear that is going to be accepted. That news is certainly welcome here. I'd ask John this question because I've been following along with this negotiation process. I know that you and the company, well, maybe not you specifically, but the company had offered, hey, let's start this negotiation sooner.
Right.
And that did not happen. I'm curious, were you provided a reason as to why that was pushed back to this date?
We got the response from the union that they didn't have time until end of June, early July. So we actually started asking them to start talking. I think in February was my first letter to them. Because 5 years ago, when we negotiated, we were done. We had a signed, sealed, and delivered deal before the end of May, which I thought was really great because then people can go about their business in the summer, knowing that in the fall the contract's coming up, we've already got our increase, and we can just start the campaign. And then the shareholders also know that we have, our staff is in there and ready to go. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, they did not have time. Their union representative, who they were getting from the International, didn't have time to come. So we were stuck with the kind of late dates.
What we heard, and I'll understand if I don't want to negotiate here on live radio where a lot of people are listening. The comment was made from the workers side that there's a level of, they feel disrespect. And I was trying to get to the bottom. Was that salary rate increases? Is it the ratification bonus? I'm just curious. Have you been hearing that as well? And if so, what's the response from American Crystal Sugar?
You know what? I do not hear that, to be frank with you, Tyler. I mean, we do employee engagement surveys. I feel we have good communication with our employees, and we don't hear that. I think that our employees are happy with their jobs. We give them lots of opportunity to train and get promotions. It's really a pay for skills organization. So frankly, I couldn't disagree more with that. I don't think there is a feeling of disrespect.
Very good. Well, I'm glad you are direct in your response there. I do appreciate that. When it comes to the extension that is going to be granted here, this would be one of those difficult questions. I know that there's no intent of a lockout from American Crystal. Unfortunately, that was the case. Not very long ago, 10, 11 years ago. I'm curious, is there a line that if, in fact, we get to this point, look, we have no other options, has that been discussed?
I don't think we're there. I mean, I've told the union during negotiations that it was never our intent to lock them out. I really don't believe there is an appetite with our employees to strike. So I think we're just stuck, continuing to talk. During the negotiations, we did offer a mediator. We had asked for a federal mediator, and we had one assigned to our matter, and we asked if they would want someone to come in, and they were not interested. Now that they're asking for an extension, they are open to that. So I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah, I would take that as a positive as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems, at least from this outside perspective that I've got, and that's all I've got. I'm not involved directly, just indirectly, because where we live, American Crystal is doing good, workers are doing good, we're all doing better.
Right. You're exactly right.
And the fact that the extension on your side sounds to be granted, the fact that they're willing to say, look, yeah, we'd welcome now someone else in to help kind of moderate this, I think is a positive sign. Lisa Morgan's my guest. She is with American Crystal Sugar. In fact, the vice president of the administration. Was there something just glaring that the company's saying, no, we cannot do this? Is it the salary? Is it the benefits? I'm just curious because I'm looking at figures here, and I'm not going to, we'll get this out online. I know where things are. But where, if anywhere, is saying, okay, this is really where, if we just hone in on this piece, the hourly rate, maybe we can get this done sooner.
Right. Well, I think a lot of it does have to do with the inflation rate and, people feeling the pinch of the gas prices and grocery prices. And we had those discussions during negotiations, and we felt that the final offer that we made was generous, 7% in the first year. That's a really nice increase. I don't think I've ever received a 7% increase. I mean, it's something that we said we know it's different. It's not like our last 5-year contract, which was 3s across the board. So coming in with a 7 and a 4, we felt was a show by the company of good faith in trying to meet the needs of the people. So that's where we're at. We still think that there's lots of opportunity for them to vote and ratify an agreement. So I'm still very positive about it. We've never met, you and I, but I'm a positive person. I think we can get this thing done.
That's good. If you listen to the show, sometimes I'm normally the opposite. So I need a balance on that other side, Lisa.
I'm telling you, Tyler, I'm not a radio listener because I work all day, so I've never listened to you.
That's just fine. You can change that now because this is where the conversation happens. When this extension is going to be taking place here, when did negotiations pick back up?
Well, it was really up to the union because they asked for the extension, and then they also told us that they could not start talking again until after Labor Day. I think that's, too bad that we have to wait that long, but we're willing to follow their lead. They're the ones asking for the extension. They're the ones that have the scheduling situation, so we said, yep, we'll work something out with you.
Very good. Lisa, is there anything I missed as far as you want to get out from the company side or yourself as this negotiation is going to be extended?
Well, I just got an email from one of the factories, and there was a posting on the union board by one of the union presidents. So Mr. Risky does not represent all 5 factories. He only represents 3. And one of those factory presidents wrote a note to the people, and one of his quotes was, "We're not interested in voting for a strike. We don't feel it's in the best interest of our members." So that, to me, is another sign that, both sides are willing to continue to talk, and hopefully we can come to some agreement.
Well, we're going to be following along, and if you need an opportunity to share the company's perspective, well, welcome you back here, Lisa. I appreciate you taking time on such short notice. I'll let you go get back after it, and we'll chat again soon, all right?
All right. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you. Lisa Morgan, she is with American Crystal Sugar, the vice president in administration there. Messages in at 35270. That is the iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club, and I will get back to those after I get you this weather update from Tooth Tall Tom Schmansky. He'll tell you about the week ahead. We'll wrap up the second hour of Afternoons Live right after this. I'm going to clean up some of the text messages that have been sent into 35270. That's the iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club. I mean, knowing how quickly this is, evolved over the last 24 hours, I do want to thank both John Risky and Elisa Morgan for jumping on this show, having the conversation here where many of the people impacted are listening. So I appreciate both of them doing just that. Tyler Mindak has the same union as Crystal Sugar, and they agreed on a new contract earlier this year, a different company doing the same job. Tyler, do we know if they are paying astronomical amounts to CEOs, et cetera? It looks like the beet farmer themselves do okay looking at their assets. I don't have that information in front of me right now. I don't. But what I gathered really from both conversations, and I think a little bit of news being made, you heard John Risky saying we're going to ask for an extension. That was at about 2:45, and right here at 3:45, you heard American Crystal Sugar spokeswoman Lisa Morgan say we are going to accept that extension. Now, granted, there's going to be a little bit of time before those negotiations pick back up, but it seems like they're at least willing to continue this going forward without having that lockup or without having a strike. That's important, ladies and gentlemen. I think we have to acknowledge that as, again, I'm going to say it one more time, we're hoping that there is nothing that even comes close to resembling a repeat of what happened 10 or 11 years ago. Bottom line is there are people that still have, bad memories of one side or another when it comes to that. So we'll continue to have the conversation right here in the Afternoons Live. We're going to switch gears here at the top of the hour, and I tell you, we are going to have I've got a number of tickets for tonight's game at the Newman Outdoor Field. You got the FM Redhawks versus the Sioux City Explorers. I know last night the place was packed. So we'll have that coming up here in just a little bit. I got to name this beer. We got Chris Atterbury, the studio host of your Minnesota Twins. And we know what? We might even be able to squeeze in one more conversation about what's going on in downtown Fargo. I know that the Kilborn Group has a ribbon cutting, an opening ceremony, whatever you want to name it, that they are inviting the public to. And that's going to be taking place before the end of the week. So we'll have that coming up before 5 o'clock as well. One thing that, because we have been very flexible today, and I do appreciate you all hanging in there as we've moved things around, including our sponsors of our chat with Chris Atterbury, Linux and Jiffy Lube. We had Dr. Catton on from NDSU talking about inflation and the price of things going up. That, of course, also is involved in this negotiation. I think you heard that from Lisa just a moment ago when it comes to salary increases. Now, you can look at a figure and say, well, that's more than I've got, or that's not, that's pennies on what others are making higher up in any given company. But inflation is a factor in people asking for the amount of pay that they are. It's the reason why they're asking for locked-in benefits the way they are, because if you're going to be, saying, well, we'll pay you more, but then when we expect you to pay more on your health insurance, I mean, that all adds up. And that's all part of the landscape I was trying to mention earlier of why you've got this employment situation saying that, look, I want to work. I just want to get paid what I'm earned or what I'm owed, what I feel like my time is worth, and what my level of expertise is, warranted for. I don't think anybody can argue that, can you? I don't fault people for wanting, a wage to meet the times that are out there. I get it. The whole, price index rising 9%. I mean, the fastest it's gone since 1980s. I mean, inflation is driving things up. Gas prices, albeit still high, are coming down. You can point the finger at whoever you want, but it's volatile. And with the rate increase that happened today about borrowing and what credit is, you want to have the money on hand. So that's why I get it. I don't fault them. Do you? 35270. You can also call in at 237-5948. Tyler, the average farmer in the Red River Valley are doing fairly well. And with welfare checks they get every month is costing the taxpayers billions comes in. That's going to be the other thing that's entered into this conversation. And I'm sure they expect it is the fact that you've got farmers involved with this as well. And people will go, and they usually do go, look to see who got what when it comes to federal taxpayer dollars. Now you got a farm bill to add into this equation as well. That's an ongoing conversation out in Washington. I know that there's been talks about, well, what did go out in the last round of stimulus, the round before that, all these things that came out, and then you add into the factor that, well, that's also part of the problem why inflation is where it is. There's a lot of money out there. So I'm bringing these all together and tying them loosely together because they're all connected. So, you can't be talking about inflation, as we did at the top of the show, without acknowledging how that impacts negotiations of contracts, how the farming industry is doing, and how gas prices impact that. It's all intertwined, and it's all impacts every single one of you listening right now. And I appreciate all of you that are listening. They're going to get there. I have a feeling they're going to get there this time because, you know what? Last time that just wasn't good for anybody. That's my final say. We're switching gears here. If you want to get your final word in, I welcome that as well. I'm not going to get to today, but we'll have it perhaps tomorrow. The fact that the Department of Justice is inching closer in their investigation to Donald Trump and what he was doing before January 6th, but after the election, what he did during all of that, those negotiations. You have people cooperating like Mark Short, who was, the number one behind Mike Pence in his office. So this is honing in, not just because of a January 6th investigation of a committee, but because of the Department of Justice. We talk about crimes that could be charged. This is where it would come from. We've got audio from the speech that Donald Trump gave yesterday. We talked about it as it was happening in real time. We'll have to pick that up tomorrow because I just don't think we're going to have enough time today. But you bear with me. You can send in your thoughts. I'll bottle them up and save them, and we'll have that conversation before all of our other usual suspects on a Thursday afternoon. When we come back, Jiffy Lube with their 3 area convenient locations here in Fargo and a Linex of Fargo for your truck accessories and so much more. They bring to you Chris Atterbury, the studio host of your Minnesota Twins. We'll do our Twins talk. I'll get you some Red Hawks tickets for tonight. And then we'll wrap up Afternoons Live on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Hope it's treating you well wherever you got us locked in at 790 AM, 94.1 and 104.7 FM, KFGO. and we got a full hour ahead. Chris Atterbury, the studio host here, Minnesota Twins. Then we got Kilborn Group to tell you about an event they got coming on. I have got tickets to the FM Red Hawks game tonight. First pitch is at 7:02. I get it. It's almost 5 o'clock, but we will have a way to get these to you. If you want to go, just text in the word Red Hawks to 35270, and some of you will get a text message back from me for your pair of tickets to the FM Red Hawks again tonight up at Newman, 7:02 first pitch. We're going to, again, Chris Atterbury, that's brought to you by Jiffy Lube, where you can get more done at a Jiffy with their 3 area convenient locations, and Linex for your truck accessories and so much more. That's coming up right after this. The game, well, they're playing right now. I haven't even bothered to look because last I heard it was 10-3 Milwaukee, and I pull it up. Oh, 10-4 Milwaukee Brewers up over your Minnesota Twins. So, yeah, but we had a conversation with Chris Atterbury earlier because of that day game. That's coming up right after this. Paul Jurgens provided KFGO News.
KFGO News, partly sunny, 76. The union representing most workers at American Crystal Sugar Processing Plants has turned down the company's contract offer, but the union and company say a lockout, as was the case in 2011, is not likely. John Risky is president of Local 167G of the Bakery, Confection, Tobacco, and Grain Millers Union.
The company told us at the negotiating table that there will not be a lockout. They will not go through that again. And as we all found out after the lockout, there was nothing left for those factories there. They went through and couldn't get their product out like they should have. And the shareholders found that out afterwards, and nobody wants to go through the lockout. It wasn't easy for them. It sure wasn't easy for our workers.
Risky says the offer was 17% on average for production workers over 4 years. Company Vice President Lisa Borgen says Crystal has accepted the union's request to resume talks.
It was never our intent to lock them out. I really don't believe there is an appetite with our employees to strike. So I think we're just stuck continuing to talk. You know, during the negotiations, we did offer a mediator. We had asked for a federal mediator, and we had one assigned to our matter, and we asked if they would want someone to come in, and they were not interested. Now that they're asking for an extension, they are open to that.
The contract covers nearly 2,000 employees. The Minnesota Chippewa tribe has voted to remove a decades-old requirement that members have a minimum of 25% Chippewa blood. 65% of voters on a referendum question say the blood quantum requirement should be removed from membership in the 6 reservation tribe. The referendum is a guide for tribal leaders who will now decide whether to ask voters to change the tribe's constitution. The majority of voters say each reservation, including White Earth and Leech Lake, should be allowed to determine its own enrollment requirements. A Cass County Sheriff's deputy is on unpaid administrative leave after she was arrested for DWI in Becker County, Minnesota over the weekend. Sheriff Jesse Johnner was notified about the arrest of Savannah Gracer on Monday. An internal investigation is now underway. Gracer began work with the Sheriff's Office in November of last year. She is a non-licensed roster correctional deputy in the Cass County Jail. The last 2 former Minneapolis police officers who were convicted of violating George Floyd's civil rights have been sentenced in federal court. J. Alexander King was sentenced to 3 years, and Tutau got a 3.5-year sentence. They were convicted in February of 2 counts of violating Floyd's civil rights. A jury found that they deprived the 46-year-old Floyd of medical care and failed to stop Derek Chauvin as he knelt on Floyd's neck. Fargo-Moorhead near 77 for a high this afternoon. Partly sunny, maybe a shower or a thunder shower yet. Evening showers a possibility, then clearing 52. Partly sunny, 74 tomorrow's high, 81 sunny for Friday. Partly sunny, 76. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
Wednesday afternoon, you know what that means. It's time to check in with the studio host of your Minnesota Twins. That's Chris Atterbury. This segment brought to you by Linex and Jiffy Lube, both of Fargo. I want to thank them for sponsoring our check-in. Chris, how are things going now that we're back in full swing here?
It's kind of nice. You know, I took that little vacation before the All-Star break and then the All-Star break, and then I was in Detroit for a couple of W's, and last night was back in studio for the first time in a while, and I remembered where all the buttons were. And then the Twins fell late 7-6, so we're kind of back in full swing. And let's be honest, trade deadline this week, and then we're into August, and you got 3 teams within 3 games of each other, and every single night brings its own drama from here on out.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I actually coincidentally just got back from vacation as well. Did you remember all your passwords? That's something I struggled with yesterday when I got back because I have a different password for it feels like every system here.
I never remember them, and I actually just hit forgot password when I sign into anything. So,
okay.
That's kind of how I roll.
Working smarter, not harder. Just do the forget password, get right into it. And one thing that hasn't really been forgotten amongst fans over the break was, God, to get to late in these games is sometimes the bullpen. You know what? They'll give up a late run, and here we find ourselves just 1 run short again outside looking in. Yeah, we still have a 2.5 game lead. But you know what? We did come back, fresh out of the gate, get 2 in Detroit, as you mentioned, Brewers here. But you meant every single game is so vital just because of how close this Central is, Chris.
No, and I don't see it changing, barring some monumental roster changes here in the next couple of days. I think what is Tuesday is the deadline, I think. So it's going to stay close, and everything's going to matter. And you know, the bullpen's going to get a lot of grief, and it obviously needs to get better. But I thought last night was a game that the Twins actually blew their chance early. They had a guy starting for Milwaukee who's a pitching-rich team who had only thrown 2 2/3 big league innings in his life. And they had him on the ropes, home run double to start the game. And then after a strikeout, you're thinking, okay, we got a chance to put up a big number. And you know they have Devin Williams. You know they have Josh Hader. And you're not going to hit those guys. Devin Williams has 28 straight outings without allowing a run. So you have to have a lead in the middle of the game or you're toasted against the Milwaukee Brewers. And then they make the snafu where they get doubled off second base. Kyle Garlick misreads a ball that gets caught, and Yelich throws him out. That's kind of the story of the year for the Twins, giving away run-scoring opportunities on the base paths, and it cost him. I mean, Urshela hit the homer to get him back in it, but Joe Smith served one right back up. Every time the Twins got a big run, they gave runs right back, and that's just a tough way to beat a good team, and Milwaukee's a good team.
You mentioned roster and this deadline coming up when Miguel Sano returns, and that adds a lot of questions to this lineup and what potential value, so-and-so, I mean, pick any name, might have in a potential trade. What's your gut tell you about Sano and now with first base, all the variables that go in here? I mean, is this visiting with Derek Hansen, my friend here, the host of Couch Potato Radio, for example, he goes, yeah, maybe Sano comes in, shows, he still has it at base, and he can be a part of a trade. I'm just curious your thoughts on Sano, this lineup, and what changes might be done this week.
Well, he came back and went 0 for 2 last night. He looks like he's in good shape. The timing's not going to be great right out of the chute. But I don't think there's a lot of trade value there. And honestly, I don't think the Twins are in a position where everybody wants them to add. And they need to add. They need to add pitching just like everybody else. But if you are adding, you aren't subtracting from your active big league roster, or you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. And so I don't think if you're not a viable piece that's helping this active roster be a first-place team, then why in the world would another team want you at this point, right? Like, you can't trade your hand-me-downs and expect to get, something new off the rack. And so the Twins, as a team in first place, are a team that if the trade is going to happen, they're going to have to give up future lottery tickets to a team that's not very good to get a good player. So the idea that Miguel Sano is going to come back and have 2 good games and be of value to somebody else is, I think, pretty far-fetched. I mean, perfect case, Miguel comes back and hits a couple of home runs and maybe can come in late off the bench as a pinch hitter and help the Twins. But it's not as if he's going to add significant value to a trade that's going to get back a player that can significantly impact the Twins' fortunes.
I mean, there's a couple of names, Chris, that come to mind that would be completely off limits, I would assume, for the Minnesota Twins. Do you agree with that? Or is, we're in a first-place position here. If we're going to make a run, we've got a couple of days left. I mean, what are some names that could potentially be a part of any deal? You mentioned that if it's going to make a team better, or is it just too wild of a game because there are the expanded playoffs with how many people are in the running to make the playoffs, that there's so many needs out there that it's just too tough to tell at this time?
Well, it's a seller's market,
Yeah.
and the sellers there aren't very many of them, right? It's Detroit and Pittsburgh, and we thought it was going to be Baltimore with their great bullpen, but they're over 500 now. They're not going to move those guys. You know, they're not going to quash their dreams of their fans. You know, Cincinnati, Oakland, you know, you've got a few Cubs, but not many. Miami would be on that list. So there's not a ton to pick from because everybody else, the Angels, I guess, would have to feel like they're in the hunt or in contention to at least be in the postseason. And so they're not going to trade anybody controllable. Our guys tend to like controllable, like guys who have another year before they're free agents. So we don't tend to dabble in the rental markets. I would think Royce is off Lewis. I think Royce Lewis would be off limits. I don't know about the rest of the minor leagues because honestly, we don't have a lot of big league ready guys in the minor leagues because they're almost all in the big leagues. With Balazovic and Winder and Cantorino and the names we've been hearing for so long, if they were healthy and they were ready, they would be here. And so that makes you kind of throw your hands up. Matt Wallner is having a great minor league year. So is Spencer Steer. I don't think you'd look at either of those guys and say, wow, that's the next Juan Soto. I think those guys you'd have to listen on because, let's be honest, you've got guys like Larnach and Kirilloff and Buxton and Kepler playing those spots. So I think that those guys you listen on literally, I think everybody except Royce Lewis. Think about this. The guy they drafted first overall last year, Chase Petty, they traded. After half a minor league season, they traded him for Sonny Gray. So it's a team that's not going to be chained to any old ideals about holding on to their prospects. I think that everything's on the table in that regard. I just don't know that they have a ton to offer in the minor leagues that can pry away a top flight guy. And you also got to remember, because people say to me all the time, and I agree with it, hey, they're paying Carlos Correa a ton of money this year with no guarantee that he comes back. You're in first place. Why would you waste that opportunity? To which I would counter, I agree, but they also knew they had bullpen issues and were willing to trade their closer on opening day for a guy who was already injured and another reliever who wasn't as good and still pay the closer. So I don't know where they are in terms of evaluating what they think they have or how deep they think they can go.
Speaking of pitching here, you mentioned what's the latest on Kenta Maeda? What's the timeline for him? The last I recall that he's getting close, and I'm sorry, I've been on vacation as I alluded to earlier. So if he's already been called up and I missed it, I apologize. But what's the latest on Kenta?
No, it's funny because I get asked about that like every day, probably 3 times a week, and I give the same standard answer. My answer on the timeline for Kenta Maeda is quit worrying about Kenta Maeda. I think if Kenta Maeda pitches any meaningful innings for the Twins in 2022, it's a wonderful bonus. He's doing well. He's smiling. I see him at the ballpark working out. He's smiling, which is a great sign. He's into it. We know he's a great athlete, that he's done his rehab diligently. If he can come back and throw, honestly, that'd be awesome. That'd be great. Mm-hmm. But that's not a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, or G in terms of, hey, we don't have to trade for anybody. Kenta will come back and be a superstar. If he comes back this year, and it's an if, or when he comes back, they're going to be very careful with him. They owe that to Kenta, and Kenta owes it to himself to not go out and put himself in a perilous spot to re-injure his arm. He needs to be thinking about long-term, and so do the Twins with Kenta Maeda. So having Kenta Maeda as your trade deadline plan to save the day is just not a great plan. Yeah. If he comes back and pitches great and tips us over the top to a pennant, that's awesome. But that's gravy. You need to worry about the biscuits first, and then you worry about the gravy.
I like that analogy. Okay, final hypothetical. Let's say nothing. There's no trade. There's no movement. What signal does that send for us as fans from this organization if they just can't get a deal done to get any reliever, any help in that bullpen?
Well, if you're a fan, you have every right to throw your arms up in the air and be disgusted because you're a fan, and that's your right. It probably the signal, if you really want to reverse engineer it, means that the asking price for relievers that could help was too steep. You know, that's what I would tell you from the logical side. No one wants to hear that, and no fan wants to hear that. They say, hey, we're good. We got Carlos. We're in first place. Go out and get a guy. I don't care what it costs. But it generally means that as I said, it's a seller's market, and that the market turned toward extortion level prices, and it wasn't worth mortgaging chunks of the future for a short-term rental who might help you, but probably isn't enough to win the World Series. I mean, that's the super boring, tepid take, doesn't get clicks on the internet, real answer.
Yeah, the business side.
I mean, that's the answer. I'll give you an example just so people don't think I'm just making this up or trying to defend the front office, because I hope that they do make aggressive moves. But as I said, I don't think we've got superstar power in the minor leagues to get some of those guys that are out there. And honestly, as Mike Petriello said last year, it's one of the weakest free agent pitching markets literally of all time. And that's not just instant history lip service. That's actually, he proved it, wrote a whole story on how this is one of the weakest markets of all time. A couple of years ago when we were pretty good, Nick Anderson, who had been with the Twins minor league team, and then he went to Florida, and he was pitching really well. And we're like, let's get Nick Anderson at the back end. He's really good. But he's not a superstar, right? He's never made an all-star team. He's not the guy that I think would walk down the street and people would be like, oh, my God, that's Nick Anderson. Did you see him? He is a Minnesota native, so maybe, that was an even added incentive. They wanted to start the conversation for Nick Anderson with Byron Buxton. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
I'm not having that conversation.
No.
I'm not giving you Byron Buxton for Nick Anderson. And then they traded him to the Rays for Ryan Stanek. Now, are you telling me that Ryan Stanek and Nick Anderson are the same guy? Absolutely not. But the Marlins were like, hey, if they want him, let's shoot for it, because the Twins are more desperate. Maybe we can get something more. And wisely, the Twins said, yeah, I don't think so. We got a bad connection. I'm going through a tunnel. And they hung up. So that's kind of the way some of these conversations happen.
Yeah.
The way that the market is currently situated, I think that's what, if you've got Frankie Montas or if you've got Joe Mantiply, like, yeah, you're in the driver's seat.
Well, Chris, man, I'm up against the clock here. It's good to have regular season baseball back. It's good to have you back on these very airways. I tell you what, let's do it again next week, all right?
All right, as long as you remember your password, I will be here.
All right, I'll log in. I'll give you a ring. Chris, my friend, I'll let you go. You take care, all right?
All right, see ya.
You bet. Chris Atterbury, the studio host of your Minnesota Twins. This segment brought to you by Linux for your truck accessories and so much more. You can find them on Main Avenue in West Fargo. Also, Jiffy Lube, where you can get more done in a jiffy at Jiffy Lube. This is After News Live rolling on. You got it locked into KFGO Fargo.
It's Milwaukee Brewers 10, Minnesota Twins 4. Score is unchanged. Not looking too promising today. Message in response to my conversation, which was clearly recorded earlier today with Chris Atterbury. Thanks to LionX. Thanks Jiffy Lube for sponsoring that weekly check-in. Tyler, the message the Twins are sending the fans if they do not make a trade is, quote, thank God the Vikings are starting. Go watch them. Yeah, I think day one of camp for the Minnesota Vikings started today. Of course, with a new coach, you got a new GM. It's a whole new environment is what we've been hearing from players. There's a little bit more. You remember when Kirk Cousins and Mike Zimmer shoved each other on the sidelines? I don't remember what prompted it. I don't remember the context. I just remember seeing it. And then they tried to downplay it like, oh, yeah, well, just got emotional. We're all excited. Yeah, there's just some more revelations that know that Mike Zimmer lost his cool when Kirk Cousins, the quarterback, decided to put his hands on him, which I don't blame Coach Zimmer for. That was the attitude that I think Zimmer had, and that attitude really set the tone, I think, for this young team. And if there's anything that seems to have changed, at least in the NFL, is really player-oriented coaches. That it's instead of this Bill Belichick model, which, I mean, quite frankly, obviously has been quite successful. Don't get me started on the New England Patriots and how lucky they got with what should have been a fumble. When Tom Brady played Oakland. No, I won't go. I was going to start slipping back into that memory. That worked for that time, but it feels like just the way of which business is done when it comes from a coach to the players in the locker room in the NFL is having, that coach that's, well, he's kind of one of us. I think about the Pittsburgh Steelers and Tomlin. You think about Shanahan, 49ers. I mean, you can go to the Rams, right? And, well, where do we have now? We got a coach that seems to fit that mold. I don't know what to expect from the Minnesota Vikings. I know everyone expects to have high hopes and then have your hearts ripped out. I don't find myself in that camp. I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. I've got zero hopes for this team going into this season. But with this new coach, this new GM, that go watch the Vikings, thank God they're starting, I kind of get it. I'm going to be following a little bit closer along as that does get underway. We're less than, I think, 3 weeks away from preseason games. Not that a lot of you care, but I'm excited because that means football's back, baby. We didn't get a chance to talk about the fact that the Fargo-Dome NDSU, they're finally going to allow us to have a nice Busch Light, a Bud Light. If you have Coors, fine, I'll allow it. At the Fargo-Dome. It's 2022. Every other institution has allowed this. Finally, we get there, yet there's still reservations. We'll try to pick that up tomorrow as well. When we come back, we're heading to downtown Fargo. Adrian Olson, Kilborn Group, will talk about their grand opening coming up later on this week. That's next year on KFGO.
KFGO News, partly sunny, 74 degrees. I'm Paul Jurgens. The union representing workers at American Crystal Sugar processing plants is asking that the current contract be extended, and the company has agreed. That follows the union's rejection of the company's 4-year contract offer that would have meant pay raises of 17% on average over 4 years. Union President John Riskey says the vote against the new contract was overwhelming. Riskey says the company does not intend to lock out workers, as was done in a bitter labor dispute in 2011. Riskey also says the union does not plan to go on strike. The current deal expires at the end of the month. In April, Riskey said that he felt good about the negotiations and the prospects for an agreement. Crystal Vice President Lisa Borgen says she thinks the offer is fair, and she says she feels positive about an eventual agreement. On what was likely the last day, one of the last days of abortions in North Dakota, clinic escorts and anti-abortion protesters gathered up and down the block in front of Red River Women's Clinic in the heart of downtown, as they have every Wednesday for years. Larry is a retiree who's been volunteering as a clinic escort for 5 years.
On one hand, we have a real sense of family among the escorts, and so I really value the people I know and our camaraderie. And at the same time, it makes me sad, it makes me worried that we are now at a point where women's rights to control their own bodies they're going to be prevented from doing that in many states. And I think it's going to cause a lot of hardship, particularly for women of color, particularly for poor women.
The clinic has plans to relocate to Moorhead, where abortion will remain legal. Anti-abortion activists at the clinic say they're glad North Dakota is banning abortion. 73, this is KFGO News. This is KFGO News. 2 people died and a home was destroyed in an explosion in the Minneapolis suburb of Hopkins late this morning. Rescue crews spent hours going through the scene. Neighbors say 2 people in their 80s lived in the home. The last 2 former Minneapolis police officers who were convicted of violating George Floyd's civil rights have now been sentenced in federal court. J. Alexander King was sentenced to 3 years, and Tu Tao received a 3.5-year sentence. They were convicted in February of 2 counts of violating Floyd's civil rights. A jury found that they deprived the 46-year-old Floyd of medical care and failed to stop Derek Chauvin as he knelt on Floyd's neck. No one won last night's Mega Millions jackpot. That has sent the estimated jackpot for Friday's drawing soaring to just over $1 billion. Minnesota State Lottery Director Adam Prock says even if you didn't win, keep in mind
that money goes for a good cause because all of the money proceeds in Minnesota go to make Minnesota better.
Lottery revenue is paid out toward prizes, administrative expenses, and retailers. The remaining portion is split between the Wildlife and Environmental Trust Fund and Minnesota's General Fund. We may see an evening shower, Fargo-Moorhead, and then a clearing sky. Meteorologist Tom Shemansky is expecting a low of about 52. Partly sunny, 74. Tomorrow's high. Northwest wind tomorrow, 14 to 29. The wind's been up there this afternoon as well. Sunny, 81 then Friday, near 88 Saturday. Sunny, wind picks up in the afternoon. Maybe a shower, thunderstorm by Saturday night. Partly sunny, breezy Sunday, 88. 73. Paul Jurgens, News Radio, KFGO.
Keep opening up new things down there after all this time and all this investment, all this work. Kilbourne Group, you know what? They're having a grand opening celebration. You're all invited. Downtown Fargo, the Kessler Project happening a little bit later on. In fact, tomorrow, 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, you're going to be there. Hopefully, Adrian Olson from the Kilbourne Group will tell you how, when, and why you want to go.
Yeah, hi,
Adrian?
Tyler.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in the afternoons. We have a little bit more fun than that morning
Right on.
show here on
Well,
KFGO.
it's a tough act to beat. They're usually kind of crazy on Friday
Yeah, it
mornings.
depends on who's in the studio. If it's just Hyde Camp, then hopefully you can stay awake. It's early and you had plenty of coffee. If you got Jack Michaels in here, it's a whole other story. But I appreciate you coming over here. But driving through downtown, every time I'm down there, it feels like something new's popped up, a new opportunity for a business, a renter, whatever it might be. This is the latest one. Explain it to us.
Yeah, a lot of growth happening in downtown. We just have a lot of people who are looking at that urban walkable lifestyle and saying, hey, I might want to try that. So building a lot of spaces to live and places to have new businesses. So Kessler is both. It's got 109 apartments in it. It's got all first floor commercial space. We have Bottle Barn off Broadway going in there. They're hoping to be open in early January. So that's very exciting to have an off sale downtown. A nice little place to get a bottle of wine. And then the 109 apartments, they've been open since early July. And we're closing in on about 40 leases. So
Already?
It's going well. Yes.
I was going to ask because just generally in Fargo-Moorhead, this area here, that you have rentals are available, but they fill it pretty dang quick.
They do. And, Kilbourne Group alone is opening over 350 apartments downtown this summer. And there was a 40-year stretch in downtown where there were 0 apartments being built. It really kind of kicked in 2015 when new stuff started getting built. So we're excited about this. It's right behind the Black Building. If you're familiar with the Black Building, it's got a great elevated patio that overlooks Broadway Square. So it's a really nice location. Right out your front door is Youngblood Coffee and all those businesses in Roberts Commons.
I'm curious, and maybe you don't have this. As far as you're putting up 300 new apartments, and I'll get back to this project. This is a cool project. Just talk about the scenery. Is there a demographic? I mean, is it typically younger people? Is it a mixture of everybody that wants to come down and live downtown Fargo? I'm just generally curious.
Yeah, well, our marketing team tries to target demographics, but it's everybody. You end up just having to, market to everybody because we do have a lot of young professionals. We've also got college students that move in. Right. And then lately we've seen a lot of empty nesters that their kids are going to college and they want a place in Fargo to be able to hang out.
Sure.
To come visit their kids, or maybe they're downsizing. So it's just it's across the board, so many different people.
Well, and more, there's the amenities, walkability you mentioned about. You can walk down there, you can have the wine and the liquor right there for you as well. So.
Yep, and not only that, but there's Broadway Square, which has live music all the time, and performances and things like that. There's more and more fitness places downtown, which we were missing for a while. We've got a convenience store now, so if you need something quick to grab for dinner, you can run over to Daly's Market. Right. So we're filling in all those gaps of things that you need to be able to live your whole life without getting in a car if you don't want to.
And then that means that you guys have been listening, because I think there was a number of years before a lot of this development happened. It's, there's just not, you got your restaurants, you got your bars, you got the theater. We don't have the grocery, don't have this, that. Well, you're taking care of a lot of that.
Yeah, you want to be in an entertainment district, but not just an entertainment district. It's really nice to have that, but also you need all the things to make your life go smoothly, like a clinic and a chiropractor and a dentist. And we have all those things now.
Yeah, right all downtown, that walkable neighborhood that is. This building, this Kessler development here, I mean, I got the press release here, and just the change, just in the scenic view alone.
Yeah. If you're familiar with downtown Fargo, right behind Broadway, there used to be 3 surface parking lots between the buildings on Broadway and the Federal Building. And it was just dead surface parking. Yeah. And now we've got the Roberts Commons building. We've got Dillard, which is the home of beer and fish. You might know that one.
Boy, do I.
Yep, me too. little well. And then that created Roberts Alley, right? So now you have this little alley that you can enjoy. And putting up the Kessler building on the south side of 2nd Avenue North, now the alley goes a little further, and it kind of kicks you out right in front of Worst Beer Hall. So we've got 2 blocks of a really cool urban alley with all of those storefronts facing the alley. So it is its own little street, and it's not very friendly to cars. You can still drive in it, but it's much more friendly to pedestrians.
We emphasize the walkability of downtown, and in particular in the Roberts Alley, all of that neighborhood there. And as far as parking goes, we talk about the service parking. I don't want to hear any complaints about there's no parking in downtown. There's parking all
thank
over the
you.
place down there. You've got parking ramps. You just have to maybe walk a little bit, get in walkability.
Yeah, and the walking isn't that far. If you're going to park at the end of the parking lot at West Acres and walk into West Acres, our walk is a lot shorter and a lot prettier. And a lot of the parking that's owned by
You can't deny that.
You can't deny that. A lot of the parking that's owned by the city, you get your first 2 hours free or all day on weekends.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going down there for lunch, you get free parking. You can go down for happy hour. You can go down for shopping.
Right.
And you don't have to worry about paying for parking.
Adrienne Olson, our guest, Kilbourne Group. So this, everyone's invited. I mean,
Yeah.
this is getting the grand opening ceremony is going to be tomorrow. I can't believe it's already Thursday tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. And it's not much of a ceremony. It's more of a party. We're going to have music. We're going to have refreshments and some food. Come anytime, drop in between 4 and 7, and you can see some apartments. We're giving away gift cards to Bottle Barn, gift cards to Mezzaluna. So there's some prizes involved. And then after our party, Folkways is having the Night Bazaar over in Broadway Square, which if you haven't been to that yet, it's a pretty fantastically magical event.
Just that whole the change on Broadway Square, and then now seeing what that's done for the market on the weekends.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a perfect match.
It is
what
a perfect
that's done
match.
downtown.
Yes.
What did I miss about this? Anything else Kilbourne Group's been working? I know there's a lot that's been going on, but
Yeah. So right now we're celebrating the opening of this one, and the next one that we open is going to be the Landing, which is over on University where the Nestor used to be, or on 10th Street, excuse me. So that is the one that will open in August, and then then we got to get some new stuff in the ground.
I would say, how do you keep track of it all? Because I mean, I drive by and then all of a sudden you see the ground floor, then all of a sudden the next time I'm down, it's completed.
Yeah, they go fast, especially at the end here. They really kick into gear. But we're a pretty boutique little developer. We only have 2 or 3 projects going at any one time, so my brain can take it.
Yeah, they're not
I got
overload.
it.
Better than I can, I assure you that. Well, this is going to be a fun time. And as Adrienne just said, it's a party. It's not necessarily a ribbon cutting. Don't think about all that. It's
no business. No
Yeah.
business to tend to. Let's just celebrate
No.
the growth, the fun that is downtown Fargo. You run across the street and run through the sprinkler if you want to.
What's the forecast tomorrow? High of 74.
Yeah, it's gonna be
sunny.
great.
It's going to be fine.
Music all over the place.
The only expectation for you is to show up and have a good time.
There
That's
you
the only
go.
thing you got to
I
worry
like
about.
that. Yes.
Adrienne, it's been fun. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Let's do this again soon, all right?
Absolutely.
Adrienne Olson, she is with the Kilbourne Group again tomorrow. That's Thursday. If you lost track of time, it's already Thursday, July 28th, 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock downtown, 624 2nd Avenue North, downtown Fargo. Got to get you this weather update from Tooth Tall Tom Schmansky. He'll tell you tomorrow night. Going to be beautiful to go join that party. We'll wrap up Afternoons Live on this Wednesday afternoon, right after this here on KFGO. And I won't let you lie to me. But I still have no idea if she's still married to the guy. I just thought the marriage of the two was quite random.
They're both Canadian,
Okay. Sure.
Smaller population. Less musicians from Canada.
Well, they became global phenomenon. Nickelback and Avril Lavigne. I mean, Skater Boy. I mean, it's a hit. I don't know what the fact that they're Canadian should have no say in this. I know a number of Canadians that have married Americans. That's quite all right.
I know a couple too.
Yeah, well, that just felt like an unusual excuse. But they're in town tonight. They're going to be at the Fargo Dome. And, well, you know what? They could probably allow a beverage or two up there, and you can do that now for the NDSU Bison as well. We'll have more conversation on that and this tomorrow. I was, during the break, visiting with a friend on the phone who relayed this, and now KFGO News confirming, Paul Juergens handed me, that the North Dakota judge blocks the trigger law that was set to outlaw abortion in the state starting tomorrow. So, remember, Supreme Court, they overturned Roe versus Wade. The whole leak thing, which I told you at the time, for everybody that was pointing, well, Tyler, obviously, was the liberal side. I said, and I had guests on to relay and explain why, in fact, this may have been the conservative side of the court putting out that leak on what that decision was going to be because they wanted to lock in the votes where they were. Turns out, over the last 24 hours, that's more inclined to be true. It wasn't the liberals leaking this out. It was the conservative side of the court because they want to make sure John Roberts did not budge, that Brett Kavanaugh did not budge. They got it done. What you've been looking for, what you have been voting for, what you've been spending and donating for, they overturned Roe versus Wade, put it back to the states. Instantly, Drew Wrigley, the acting attorney general appointed here in North Dakota, put the ball in motion to outlaw abortion in North Dakota in the 30-day time frame because of a trigger law that was passed quite a while ago. That was argued. There was a lawsuit brought that, in fact, saying that this has not reached through the proper channels, that this should not have been acted as of now, that you're going too fast, Attorney General Drew Wrigley. A North Dakota judge says the lawsuit was correct, that the Attorney General here in North Dakota did move too quickly on this. Now, ultimately, the outcome's going to be the same. It's likely going to be pushed back. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be decided. In fact, more information will be coming out on that, I'm sure, in the next few hours, the next day ahead. Because what this means now is what the litigation, how much longer does the clinic in downtown Fargo have? I don't have those details right now. But the bottom line is a North Dakota judge just told Drew Wrigley, you went too fast. Slow down, get the law right. So that's the latest here. That, again, just breaking news. That North Dakota judge blocks the trigger law that was set to outlaw abortion in the state of North Dakota starting tomorrow, pushing it right up against that limit. So we'll see. I don't know what the timeline is. I'm not sure what that, in fact, will mean for timelines of them moving over to Moorhead. But ultimately, Drew Wrigley getting that wrong, which I will also point out, Drew Wrigley is getting it wrong with investigating or not investigating the emails that Liz Brocker deleted. I talk about gatekeepers and preventing public officials from speaking to you and I. Well, that same gatekeeper should not be deleting public records that are also yours and mine. We should have access to them to ask questions since they're working for us. And then we should have public access to the records, especially from the office that seemed to at least publicly pride itself in making sure every other agency, every other entity that is a public entity had to, in fact, provide and follow open meetings records, open meeting laws. All those things were held up except for their office. And you're just going to say, well, they're gone. No, I'm not going to accept that. I don't think you should either. I'm hoping that there are other means that are exercised to say, you know what, if the Attorney General's office now is going to investigate whether there was any breaking of the law, then we've got other means, other attorneys out there that can take this up. I mean, for example, ladies and gentlemen, you think about what the tragedy that happened in South Dakota. I'm not trying to compare that tragic, fatal accident that happened, but when the Attorney General's office can't investigate it themselves, you know what they did in South Dakota? They reached out to North Dakota. And we did the investigation into Jason Ravnsborg. Your tax dollars went towards that investigation. We did it right. Ultimately, he got impeached. That's another side of the story here. But my point being, if our office, if our attorney general is not willing to look into the intent, the process, the legality of what that office did, then you better hand that off and be willing to allow someone else to do it for you. As of right now, that has not been heeded. The calls for that, with Rich Warner doing that, the Democratic NPL has done that. And the reason I bring both those up, because that's a bipartisan call for getting the truth, to getting the records that are not Wayne Stenjum's, they are not Liz Brocker's, they're yours. They are mine. They are the taxpayers of North Dakota, the public. So this is 2 strikes of getting it wrong within the last couple of weeks when it comes to the current Attorney General and Drew Wrigley. So we'll find out more. Again, that's just breaking news. I'm not sure what this entails for a timeline. We'll get those, I'm sure, as this news continues to unfold. Paul Jurgens in that KFGO News Center will have the latest for you. In the meantime, in about 5 minutes, it's going to be 5 o'clock. You're going to punch out and you're going to be driving home listening to the Drive Time News with Jack Sunday, who enters the KFGO studio.
Yes,
hey, man.
Indeed. All the news you need for the drive home. We're going to have John Strand on, City Commissioner John Strand. A couple of things to talk about. That idea, which was not voted for at the last commission meeting, about having 2 extra city commissioners in town. And I doubt that's the last we've seen of that.
I suspect not either. In fact, I kind of threw it out there just for the listeners. I didn't have a conversation with John Strand, but, is it time? Overwhelmingly, people said, yeah, we're getting too big.
Yeah. And I also want to ask him about some other issues in town.
Some plenty of issues to talk about.
Well, yeah, especially right now with the food truck and food cart question. I don't even think it's a controversy. Everybody seems to be for them.
I know it is. That's why I found it so unusual that there was big green signs up on some of the food trucks, like, sign this petition, make sure Mayor Mahoney doesn't put us out of business.
Oh, yeah. Well, come on.
I know.
It sounds to me like it's going to be cool.
Yeah, I think
when
so
it all
too.
shakes down. And of course, we have Too Tall Tom right after the CBS News. We'll get into that. And Paul Jurgens and Polly Lines and Derek Hansen with sports. And we have all the news you need, including, ag markets and another ride with Joel Heitkamp. And
been a lot of news today, so we're going to be getting a lot of news in this drive time news.
Boy, I tell you what. I know if I heard that an indictment had been reached against me by a grand jury and it could go to trial, it would be like my worst day ever.
You and everyone else listening.
Yeah. And then last night, the Washington Post broke that story. Of course, a criminal indictment had been reached against Donald Trump.
And they're inching closer in their investigation from the Department of Justice.
I tell you, I'd have to sit down.
better take a load off, is what Jack Sunday's saying.
Man.
He's got the Drive Time News coming up in about 3 minutes time. Folks, today, thank you for everybody jumping on last minute, having a conversation, which is what this platform is for at KFGO. You're listening. They know you're listening. And it's a platform for them to actually get their sides out. And we had both of the sides when it comes to this American Crystal Sugar negotiation with the union. What I took away was the fact that, okay, there's been no agreement. It was rejected by the union. They asked for an extension, and you just heard right here in real time that within that hour of receiving that American Crystal Sugar is going to accept that extension. Every day when it comes to news, and you know what? We just closed out with some more news about North Dakota judge blocking the trigger law. Attorney General Drew Wrigley went a little too quick. We'll pick up all these conversations. Plus, we got Audibles. We got Spencer Worth, the Meat Dude. We've got Tanner Attorney, Devil's Eye Tourism. We got a full lineup for you tomorrow. But that's it for me today. I'm Tyler Axis, your host here on Afternoons Live. Until then, you drive safe. You take care of yourself. I'll check in tomorrow right here on 790 AM, 94.1 and 104.7 FM, KFGO.